What's up, people of the interwebs? Hope you're having an amazing day. So, today's video is a bit off a spontaneous one. I haven't really scripted it. It's just some general thoughts I've just had of living in Japan that I just want to share, have a quick conversation with, see what you guys' opinions are, and let's have a conversation. So, the big one of all about Japan is the decrease in the population. So, Japan's population is going down and down every year, and this is going to be a continuous trend. But my thoughts to this decrease in the population is the countryside. I think there is a big risk that the countryside of Japan could die if Japan doesn't make any steps to correct it or fix it, or at least, just most importantly, just encourage people to move down to the countryside. As someone who currently lives on Shikoku, which is Japan's fourth biggest island, I see the signs of that decrease in the countryside since when I moved here to now, which is nearly getting to 3 years since I've lived in Shikoku. And in that 3 years, there's been a huge change. The biggest one is schools. There has been about 6-7 elementary schools that have shut since I have got here, and it is only going to get worse. In April coming, there is another 2 or 3 that will shut this year, and there is talks for 2 or 3 more to shut in the next couple of years. And it's just going to go down, down, down. And my biggest thing with how I see the countryside currently of Japan and living here is a lot of it does come down to the whole political games again. All these countries, it's not just Japan as well, England is also the same. You know, because Japan is top heavy on the pyramid, you know, their biggest voting generation is the older ones. So for the governments, they want the older people's votes, and they care for is healthcare, more things that will please them, which, don't get me wrong, I think as a party and everything, you know, they're trying to get votes at the end of the day, but I just think a lot of the times Japan, other countries, they don't think about the bigger picture in the long run. I think especially in the next 14-15 years that you're really going to see this change. I think when it gets to 2040, I think the current landscape of Japan is going to be very different. And my biggest thing with just seeing and living on the countryside, no young people want to stay. Like, there's nothing in these towns, places, city that is encouraging young people to stay. You know, they're growing up in these towns, they're finding it bored, they've got nothing to do, they want to get out. So the second they finish their basic mandatory education and probably when they go to university, they're going to go to a big city, and they're probably never going to come back. You know, I speak to a lot of my students, and a lot of them, they don't want to stay here because they just find there's not a future here currently. They're going to want to go to the big city the second they get the chance for it. And it's really sad because I think living in Shikoku is absolutely beautiful. There's so many beautiful sceneries, but also I don't blame them because the public transport routes, they're not easy, they're not convenient. You know, if I want to go to like the big cities on the weekend where I currently am, my closest bigger city is an hour 45-minute train ride. So, you know, that's nearly 2 hours. It's a long time to travel. Even for the kids, if they want to go to their local cinema is a 1 hour, half an hour drive just to go see a movie in the cinema. You know, for these kids who live around here, I don't blame that they want to leave because there's nothing in their current towns and cities that are keeping them to stay. And what is really sad, my current placement, it did used to have a cinema, but during COVID, it killed it and it's never come back. So now they have to travel an hour and a half. And I don't know, it frustrates me a little bit because I think places and towns, they shouldn't be encouraging like, oh, okay, we've lost it, we now have to drive. I think there should be some more force in the current, like, your town's climate to really bring it back. You know, they shouldn't be accepting, why do we have to drive an hour and a half? Because it's all those small little steps that soon bring like decreased enjoyment in living in a town. Because, you know, you lose your cinema, then you lose different restaurants, and then you lose arcades, and you just lose things for the kids to do. And I think, you know, if a kid's grown up in a town, if they don't enjoy that area, you know, it's going to increase the chances of, oh, I don't want to come back, I don't want to live there because I didn't enjoy it. And as a kid who also lived and grew up in the countryside, I agree to this statement because I grew up in Somerset, which is very countrified. Don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful town, place, but it's so countrified. I was sick and tired of it. You know, I don't want to live in a town, especially if I ever have kids. I don't want to live in like the countryside. I want the perfect balance where you're near to a city, just so when they get older, they have better opportunities for jobs, placements. You know, I'm also fully expecting with current climates, you know, kids aren't going to leave the house at 18. There's a high chance if you have kids nowadays, they're going to stay with you sort of in their 30s, 40s, you know, just probably when they feel comfortable, financially stable, that they can kind of move out and venture out. You know, I'm fully prepping for that. And I would want to be in a location that whatever my kid wants to try and succeed, or at least try and get easy job to start with, you know, you're in a good location. That's kind of my idea. And I think a lot of the kids feel like that too. Or sometimes you have the opposite where, because the kids don't have the finances, they then do feel like they're trapped in the countryside. So I'm just a big believer on, because these places are beautiful, but I'm just seeing how the current climate for towns and stuff, they're not doing a lot of encouragement or fit items to keep younger people here. They're trying to please the older generations more because obviously that's their main group. And probably for these dying towns, you know, they are the biggest percentage who actually live in these towns, and they want to please the biggest majority. But I think, you know, once that majority dies and you've got the younger ones left, you know, you're not giving them many items to encourage them to want to stay. And I just think if they're not careful, that's how all these towns are going to die. People are going to move away to the bigger cities. What was really interesting, I can see if I'll find it again, but I saw a graph where everywhere in Japan had decreased in population except for Tokyo and the big cities. So it's just showing there, you know, many people who live in the countryside, they have to move to the bigger cities just to find better employment opportunities. Okay, this is also a little bit of editing, Kirsty, now, but I found that graph and wow, I didn't even realize Shikoku was like a deep red. So, you know, it's showing the decrease in population is happening faster here. But that also doesn't surprise me because the kids don't have an interest to stay. I'm also assuming a part of this is also going to be death in population as well. So the older generation is dying. What's one data I did see in my town. So currently my population of city, it was around 70,000. And I remember a flyer came through my door one day and they sort of said by 2040, they predict that this city's population is going to become 40,000 people, which is insane because they're sort of predicting, what's that, around maybe 40% or definitely under 50% because half of 70,000 will be 35 and they predict 40,000 will be the population in 2040. And you know, that is only 15 years away. So it's wild to think in 15 years they're going to lose such a huge percentage of the city. And probably a good chunk of that is just going to be death of the population because this city is definitely more of an older generation. It's also really sad because when I walk around my current city, you can see that this city is designed to be a city, but there just isn't the population for it. It's just really sad, especially on like a Friday, Saturday night. You know, that's kind of the party, clubbing night days, and there's no one out. It's a ghost town. And it's just sad because you can just see this is built to be a big party city. I don't know, maybe not party city, but it's designed to be a city where, you know, there should be a bit of nice social life. You know, the weekends it should be bopping if you kind of go to the town centre, and it's just not. It's just a ghost town, and it's really sad. I think they should be working towards, you know, move businesses out of these big cities, put them else in Japan. Same with the tourism. You know, I see people whinging about, oh, you know, Tokyo's too overcrowded. You know, I'm seeing that this year we're going to get a massive Pokemon theme park, which is really cool. But again, they've put it around Tokyo. So all you're doing is encouraging people who come to Japan to stay to Tokyo, where I kind of think with these kind of big theme parks, you know, put them somewhere else in Japan so then it at least spreads out the tourist population throughout. And there's so many other beautiful places to see in Japan, because to be honest, if I didn't get my placement of Shikoku, I would probably still have no idea where this island is. I probably would have never gone onto this island, but this island is so beautiful. There's so many great items to see. You know, you have if you're really into spiritual enlightenment, you have the 88 Temple Henro of Shikoku. If you like camping and just living in nature, there's so many great wildlife, scenic spots. You know, this island is absolutely beautiful, but I just think they're not putting in items and places. I just think they're not putting in the correct steps to keep it secure. I think at the moment it's just kind of people see it's an issue, but no one's, or maybe, you know, I think people see there's an issue for this and just nothing's getting done, or just in typical Japan fashion, people want to get something done, but it's getting stuck behind red tape, paperwork, and just nothing's getting moved. You know, I think a big thing for this island that would encourage more people to come is to get a bullet train, get a Shinkansen. Because if you can get, you know, if I wanted, let's say for me, if I wanted to get to Osaka from my current location, it takes about 4 to 5 hours on different forms of public transport, where if they put a bullet train, that could change it in 2 hours. So massive game changer. You know, people who live in bigger cities, they might decide to, well, I'm going to move and raise my kids in the countryside, because being 2 hours away from work isn't as bad as 4 or 5 hours. You know, it's just those kind of small little steps that big cities, I think you just need to start pushing them out and encouraging people to move to the countryside. You know, bring back work, bring back item, just bring some things that, you know, encourages of, okay, there's a lot of things to do in the countryside. We can raise a family here and also work in a big city or company that isn't too far. It's that kind of, it's trying to get that perfect balance. I also think there's a decrease in people wanting to be their own boss, or it's hard to do the setup for that, because everyone just seems to want to work in like an office where there's no sense of like being an entrepreneur. And I think especially for the countryside, you really need entrepreneurs to come down. And it's all those kind of small generational steps, how the culture changes, how the government changes. You know, it's all like a domino effect for how you start losing less and less people in the countryside, and eventually these places become a ghost town. And I just currently think how seeing everything around in Japan with the government, the decrease in population, there's no sort of, all at the moment it seems to get worse and worse and worse. Nothing's kind of improving, and I just think if they're not careful, places could become a ghost town. And it's really sad because there's so many beautiful things, you know, part of the culture will get lost of those towns. You know, one thing I've noticed with living in Japan is every town seems to have their own unique kind of culture, identity. You know, the beautiful thing is the mascots of Japan. You know, it's not just the prefecture that has a mascot. Every little town will make their own unique mascot. Even for the manholes, you know, every individual town will have its own special design man cover. And it's small things like that you would just lose just because there's no encouragement on trying to keep the younger generation to stay, because there's just less funding and resources going to them currently. A lot of it's just going to the older generation, which is just really sad overall. And that's kind of just my kind of quick 10 to 15 minute yap on the current situation of just the potential loss of the countryside, decrease in population in Japan, and just a few of my current thoughts in the fear of potentially a lot of towns in Shikoku could become a ghost town and no one lives there, and you just lose a part of that kind of town's culture, identity. Yeah, it's just a little bit of my thoughts. I've been thinking on it. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, because I do think it's very interesting, also very sad to see, you know, there is that risk of that culture and identity being lost just because of the population decrease. And it's hard because it's not one simple solution. There's so many small things that have triggered to this. I do think one big thing, if the economy can get fixed and, you know, better living conditions, more money, I think you'll get more of people my age demographic having children, because, you know, I'm going to be 30 this year, so I am technically part of the problem of not having kids in this current climate. But currently, I wouldn't want kids in this climate. You know, one day I would like to have children, but I just don't want to raise a kid if I can't financially support them, or most importantly, give them a better life to what I have, or at least kind of keep them on the same good sort of middle class standard of living I had growing up. You know, most times when people have children, they want to improve the next generation, and currently I just don't see that in the current climate. But let me know what your guys' and thoughts and opinions are for my little yappy video. If you guys enjoy these kind of spontaneous videos, let me know in the comments down below. My goal this year is to really lock in. I want to make more videos on this channel. I want to talk about more things in Japan. I think I've also been here long enough where I feel like I can give at least a somewhat good 2 pennies worth of current climate changes, just Japan in general now. Like, I've definitely kind of settled into living in Japan. We'll get some more videos of just Japan life in general and just being a foreigner living in Japan. So stay tuned, the best is yet to come. So thanks for watching. Bye.